an application to sever a portion of the property to have a land area of approximately 1.38 hectares to merge with adjoining property at 201 Wellington Street. And the purpose and effect of the second consent application, which is application B12-03, is to sever a portion of the property to have a land area of 363 square meters to create a new residential lot on the subject land adjacent to 331 Victoria Street. I will ask the clerk for the method of notice for tonight's public meeting.
Notice of tonight's public meeting was advertised in local media sources as of August 27th, 2020. Notice is posted on the town's website. Property owners within a 60-meter radius have received confirmation. And I just wanted to note, I apologize, Mr. Mayor, it's consent application B2002 and consent application B2003. I had the incorrect application numbers noted.
Okay. So we will have two presentations from our town planner, one with respect to each of the two consent applications, following which, and we'll deal with these in turn, but following each application presentation, there will be an opportunity for members of the public and council to ask questions or provide comments. And if you wish to receive notice of council's decision with respect to these two applications or notice of any further actions on the matter, then I would ask that you please contact our clerk by email at jwilloughby@shelburne.ca. So with that, Steve, I'll ask you to walk us through the first application, B20-02.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the first application is by Glenn Schnarr and Associates for property with no civic address, part of Lot 31, Concession 3, Amaranth in the town of Shelburne. The property straddles the boundary of the town and township. And I will note Bruce McCall Richmond from Glenn Schnarr and Associates is here representing the applicant as well as, and I believe Kyle Brown is in attendance for Stella Jones. So this map just illustrates the area context. Here we go. You can see, as I mentioned, the limits of the subject property. It's a large agricultural property that straddles the boundary of the town and the township. You can see the red line showing the boundary between the municipal boundary. The Stella Jones site is where you see this industrial label with the building along the former rail corridor and the wood piles identified in white. The residential area labeled there, of course, is the Highland Village subdivision under construction, and then the IK World property to the west. The property has frontage along Victoria Street and 30th Side Road in the township of Amaranth. So this map just illustrates, this is the proposed consent sketch provided by the applicant. The area to be severed and joined to the Stella Jones property at 201 Wellington Street is shown in the red crosshatch. It's 1.38 hectares in area, about 3.4 acres. It does not, this square piece to be severed from the broader property and added to Wellington Street property does not have its own legal frontage at this time. So that's one of the reasons it would have to be added to the Wellington Street property. But we have also been made aware that Stella Jones, being the proposed purchaser of and developer of the land, has also acquired 600 Victoria Street, which does have frontage on Victoria Street adjacent to the property. The remaining land shown in green cross-hatching or angled hatching would be retained by the current owner, the Besleys, as one large property, and part of it being in Shelburne and the remnant part being in Amaranth. So this just indicates the related site plan application that's currently in process. Council may recall that last year a site alteration permit was before council for some paving work on the existing Stella Jones property. A site plan application is in process for phase 2 of the improvements, which involves and will come forward separately to council with some additional paving and grading work in the front of the property, as well as a pond in the kind of L-shaped piece along Main Street. And there is a third phase to the proposed Stella Jones development, which involves the additional land to the south. We do not have a site plan application for that third phase at this time, but the intent with assembling the land based on pre-application consultation for the site plan for the third phase is that this would be potentially used for a new building as a distribution center for the operations. The other intent is to reconfigure access potentially to the site with a truck access coming into the site off of Victoria Street, as well as some staff parking and access to the distribution center that's proposed, which may mean that there may be other options for the Main Street access. Since the report was filed for the agenda, we did receive some additional agency comments. I just want to quickly highlight those for the committee. So we received a letter from the NVCA. The NVCA is a key agency for the review of this application because a good part of the proposed severed land and parts of the retained land as well are within the NVCA regulated area. And part of the proposed severed land is within the floodplain. I don't think we have a drawing that shows that, but basically, the Besley Drain runs right through here on this black line, and there's floodplain on either side of it. So the NVCA has just noted here in their comments that they will review any proposed development of the proposed severed land through the site plan control process. And at that time, the applicant would be required to provide the NVCA with the necessary studies to address development along the floodplain area. So they've also highlighted here that studies are required to confirm the limits of development and ensure that no development will occur within the existing floodplain and meander erosion hazards. With that said, though, provided those things are addressed through the site plan process, which would be the normal process, they've indicated the NVCA has no objection to the approval of the consent application as applied for, and I've requested a copy of the decision. We did receive county planning comments as well since the report was filed, and there are 3 matters noted by the county planning consultant. They've requested confirmation regarding the woodlands located adjacent to the property and whether they're deemed significant. So I think the woodlands that they're referring to, the only one that we could associate to this property is the one that kind of crosses the west boundary of the property in the township. But from our review, yes, those woodlands may be significant, but there is no impact with respect to the severance in the eastern portion of the property. So no concern with respect to that comment. They've indicated, confirmation should be provided as to whether an environmental impact statement is required relative to proximity to the woodlands and the wetlands. So there are some wetlands over here as well, adjacent to the property. Same comment applies from the town's review. The severance application really has no impact to those features. And then finally, that consultation occurred with the NVCA regarding source water protection. We did receive, since the report was issued, confirmation from the source protection, from the risk management official at the NVCA for source protection that there's no concerns with the severance from a source protection standpoint. That would be reviewed again, obviously, as part of the proposed site plan application through that process. And then finally, there was comments from the Township of Amaranth, just indicating that Township of Amaranth requests the opportunity to provide comments on any future site plan approval. So that's fine. We would normally circulate the township as a courtesy for any site, obviously, that's got property on the town boundary with the township. But there is no requirement for the town to do so. I've responded back to the township planner to indicate, yes, we will include them in the site plan circulation when we have that information. And then further, that they would like the opportunity to comment on that. So they haven't indicated any objections to the severance, but just the one comment about wanting to review the site plan. And that, I think, covers the agency comments. We have not received any public comments or questions with respect to this application. So at this time, I would invite comments from the committee and any questions, and between me and the applicant, we'll try to address them for you.
Are there any members of the public, Jennifer, that are online?
No, sir. We've had no members of the public register for this meeting.
Okay. Any questions or comments from council?
I'd like to ask a question if it's possible.
Councillor Bernardo.
Truck traffic on Victoria, how much truck traffic are we allowed to, or how much truck traffic is going to be coming out on Victoria Street?
Through you, Chairman Mills, I don't have the numbers at my fingertips, unfortunately. That would be something that we would review through the site plan application. But in addition to that, I think I noted in the report, and it would just reiterate here that I believe there's some relief that would be required in order to permit truck traffic on that section of Victoria Street from the town's traffic bylaw. Now, since writing that report, we did look more closely at the bylaw. It does say that the bylaw doesn't apply to restrict local deliveries for property owners. So we would have to consider that context as well if an access is proposed on Victoria, but ultimately it is the town who would have to approve that access. I guess the only other information I can offer in response to that question is that we do have representatives for Stella Jones here tonight who may be able to speak to the volumes of trucks that they would expect if they do pursue an access on Victoria.
Kyle,
Afternoon or evening, I guess.
how are you?
Not too bad. And you?
Good.
We would be looking at somewhere between, depending on the year, 18 to 2,300 trucks would be the approximate guess we would be looking at there, based on what we've shipped historically and what we were expecting to see for growth.
Would you be shutting down your truck access on the Highway 89?
If we gained access to Victoria Street after it was completed, yes, we'd be shutting down that access.
Okay. Any other questions from committee members? No. Okay. So as is the case with all consent applications, we essentially have three options. We can approve it, we can refuse it, or we can defer it. Generally, is there support amongst members to approve it?
I'd move to approve it.
Okay, not hearing any objections, so. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Buffett. Okay, so moved by committee member Bernardo, seconded by committee member Buffett. After considering the application, the committee is satisfied with allowing this consent for the purpose of severing 1.38 hectares of land from the original 61 hectares of lot area. The committee, having regard to those matters under subsection 5124 of the Planning Act as amended, resolves to grant provisional consent subject to the following conditions being fulfilled. Number one, that the Secretary Treasurer's certificate under subsection 5342 of the Planning Act as amended shall be issued and the Secretary Treasurer's fee be paid. Number two, the payment of cash in lieu of parkland at the rate of 2% of the value of the severed parcel. Number three, that pursuant to section 50 sub 12 of the Planning Act, it is hereby stipulated that section 50 sub 3 or sub 5 of the Planning Act shall apply to any subsequent conveyance of or other transaction involving the identical subject parcel of land, and the applicant shall provide the town with a solicitor's undertaking confirming that the severed parcel will be consolidated with the adjacent land at 201 Wellington Street and become one parcel of land. Number four, that the approval of the draft reference plan as applicable shall be obtained at the Committee of Adjustment Office, which is the town of Shelburne, and the required number of prints, which is 3 of the resultant deposited reference plan, shall be received. And number five, that the conditions are to be fulfilled and the consent is to be finalized on or before 1 year from the date of the issuance of the committee's notice of decision. and the application is approved on conditions as stated that I've just read. So moved by member Bernardo, seconded by member Buffett. Is there any discussion on that? All in favor? And that application is approved. Thank you, guys. So on to the second application, B20-03, which is the same property that we considered the zoning application earlier in our special meeting for 331 Victoria Street. I know we had a lot of discussion. We're sort of crossed over probably into Committee of Adjustment territory, but anyways, that was sort of the convenient way of doing it. But anyways, Steve, do you want to walk us through your report on the consent application?
Certainly, and seeing as we had that detailed discussion at the zoning report level, I think there's an understanding by everyone who's in the meeting and everyone who's listening of what the consent application involves. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just skip ahead to the recommendation, which is that the consent be conditionally approved, and these are the town's standard conditions. The cash in lieu of parkland we're recommending because obviously 5% of the severed lot would not result in a meaningful parkland block for the town, and there would be no park that could be built there. So recommending cash in lieu, which is standard for these corner lot severances and other infill severances. There will be an agreement that will come back to council at a future date, again detailing lot servicing, grading, and access requirements. The zoning amendment you dealt with in the previous public meeting tonight, and there will be a surveyed reference plan to complete the to address the conditions and complete the registration of the new lot, and the applicant has 1 year to do that. We had already read into the record the comments that pertain to both the zoning bylaw and the consent application. So I just remind that those comments were received and apply to both. We did receive some additional agency correspondence as well with respect to the consent application since it was circulated. Township of Amaranth was circulated because they're within 1 kilometer of the site, but they have no interest, so they just confirmed no comments or objections. Canada Post just confirmed receipt of the application and noted no objection. There will be a new municipal address assigned to the severed lot after it's registered and when as part of the municipal approval for any new home. We did receive the county building and planning comments. And the only thing I'd highlight there is there was a comment again about source water protection and confirming with the NVCA that there's no concern. The NVCA confirmed that the site is not within a wellhead area or any kind of, is not subject to any source protection policies. So no issues there. I think that is it in terms of, we may have had one other response from the Dufferin Peel School Board, but just no comment or concern. So that's my presentation for this public meeting, and available for questions if there are any final questions on the consent application related to this property.
Are there any public members still online, Jennifer?
No, sir, there are not.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments from committee members that we didn't address during the zoning discussion? No? Okay. So is everybody satisfied with an approval then? Okay. Get a mover and seconder for that. Moved by member Bernardo, seconded by member Fegan. After considering the application, the committee is satisfied with allowing this consent for the purpose of severing 363 square meters of land from the original 726 square meters of lot area. Committee, having regard to those matters under subsection 5124 of the Planning Act as amended, resolves to grant provisional consent subject to the following conditions being fulfilled. one, that the Secretary Treasurer's certificate under subsection 5342 of the Planning Act as amended shall be issued and the Secretary Treasurer's fee be paid. Number two, the payment of cash in lieu of parkland at the rate of 5% of the value of the new created lot. Number three, that the owner enter into an agreement with the town addressing site servicing, grading, and drainage requirements, and the details of all servicing connections, modifications, and improvements to existing services, including sanitary sewers, water supply, storm sewers, roads, hydrants, utilities, and any required easements deemed necessary by the town in accordance with town standards and to the satisfaction of the town's Director of Development and Operations and the town engineer. Number four, that the owner obtain approval of a zoning bylaw amendment for the two resultant lots to a zone that will accommodate the proposed lot areas, yards, and setbacks. Number five, that the approval of the draft reference plan as applicable shall be obtained at the Committee of Adjustment Office, which is the town of Shelburne, and the required number of prints of the resultant deposited reference plan shall be received. And finally, number six, that the conditions are to be fulfilled and the consent is to be finalized on or before 1 year from the date of the issuance of the committee's notice of decision. Any further discussion on this? All in favor? And that is approved. All right.
Thank you, Mayor Mills and council.
Thanks, Sandy.
All the best.
Okay, so that concludes our Committee of Adjustment meeting. Steve, there's nothing else?
Nope, that's
All right.
it.
Can I have a motion to adjourn? Member Hall, seconded by Member Buffett. All in favor? That's an easy one. Carried. All right. Thank you all.
Thank
Thank you.
Monday.